Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the virtual world of the Quality Improvement Network. I'm very happy to be co-hosting this with AQuA, Advancing Quality Alliance today. This is very new for me. It probably might not be as new for you, given that you're probably using Teams quite frequently now. I'm more of a Zoom person. However, I'm learning as we go. We have today myself, my name's Jackie Holt. We have Emma Walker, an Associate Director from AQuA with us, and Peter Ledwith, who is Quality Improvement Programme Manager for Safety and Mortality at AQuA as well, who will actually be presenting the masterclass today. And supporting us is Delphine from AQuA, who will probably just give us a wave there, and Pam Holstein, the Communications Manager from Mersey Internal Audit Agency. And we've got some background technical support, but let's just hope everything goes well today. Some of you are quite new to the Quality Improvement Network, but we have been actually running this since December 2015. We've been running 4 face-to-face events each year, and we've really come together as a network. We usually sort of run all kinds of masterclasses, interactive, participatory sessions with our members across the whole of the Northwest. So AQuA and Mersey Internal Audit, as you hopefully know, do deliver services right across the Northwest and occasionally beyond the Northwest as well. But however, we don't exclude anyone from outside of our usual geographical area if you'd like to join us. So we decided, unfortunately, we were going to run these face-to-face this year, but we couldn't do that, as you know, for reasons we know well enough now. So we came together and thought we'd try it on a virtual basis, building on some previous work AQuA and MIA have done together as well in terms of their board events. So not to be defeated, this is the first of a series of 4 which is going to run now for the next 5 months through to March next year. And hopefully, if it goes well today, we'll be able to continue them. I'm sure it will be. And so today's event is about the national patient safety, but the other 3 events, I'll just sort of mention them now and probably again at the end. You may have seen the trailer that came out. The next one is the 3rd of December, Measurement for Improvement. Then 3rd of February 21 is personalised care, and the 3rd of March 21, developing a quality improvement system and culture. So it is a series. It is meant to be a package for you. We will deliver the masterclasses, but also following the events, we actually provide presentation slides, summary notes and learning points, and we do ask you to evaluate the events as well, because that helps us going forward to present the evidence to keep these funded, to keep them running. So really, just give you a little briefing on the Quality Improvement Network and the purpose of it. I've mentioned it's a Northwest network. It's a meeting really of like-minded people across the network, and we facilitate access to quality improvement, to expertise and experience around quality improvement. We share experiences and intelligence about all things quality improvement, particularly methods and practice. And we look together to find solutions to everyday challenges. So you're not alone. There is a network of people there who can support you. And also, we do like to try and explore ideas for testing out and developing these ideas in practice. So that's really the purpose, the original purpose of the meeting. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Pam, who will be able to go through the technicalities of her meeting on team and sort of meeting etiquette, really, in this new virtual age. So I'll hand you over to Pam.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Pam Holstein. I'm Head of Comms at MIAA, and I'm supporting the event today. We're recording today's event just to let you know. If that's a problem for anybody, just let me know. You can drop me a message in the chat box. Emma and I will be looking after the chat box today. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask the speakers, pop them in there. Any remarks you want to make that or you want to share with the other delegates, pop that in the chat box. We just sort of ask you to mute your microphone. Teams is quite heavy on bandwidth, so if you're not struggling too much with your bandwidth, we ask you to keep your video on so that you are present in the meeting, but mute your microphone. And it also helps to shut down emails and any other background applications that you've got running. We'd like you also, if you want to participate on Twitter, and we'll put some stuff in the chat box about our Twitter handles. Feel free to make your comments there. And finally, I will offer my tech support if you've got any particular issues that we can help you with. I'll pop my number in the chat box there. Just text me and I'll see if I can help you if you're having technical problems. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Emma Walker from AQuA.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Jackie. Hi, my name's Emma Walker. I'm one of the Associate Directors here at AQuA. We're really delighted to be working with the MIAA, and we've got some new people on today. For those of you who don't know who AQuA is, so AQuA is the Advancing Quality Alliance. We're a membership body based in the northwest of England, but we do work nationally. We're hosted by Salford Royal, so we are, although we're not part of the Salford Royal, we are hosted by them, so we're part of the NHS. And we have about 60 members of all sorts of organisations, so acute, mental health, community, ambulance trusts across the northwest, and we focus on building improvement, safety, person-centred care, transformation and flow, and an analytics function. So today we're focusing on safety. Can I have the next slide, please, Pete? Thank you. So just as Pam said, be patient with the technology and with each other. It's great if you can have your cameras on so we can see you, but if the bandwidth's poor, then obviously turn those off. This is your time, it's very precious, so ask questions and be curious about what you want, and remember to share and learn from one another. So over to you, Pete.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Pamela. So, welcome everyone. Again, that's probably the third or fourth time you've been said that, so hopefully you're feeling quite welcome by now. So my name, as you can see on the slide, my name is Peter Ledwith. Pete, Programme Manager for Safety and Mortality at AQuA. I've been in healthcare for a few years now. I thought I'd give you a little bit of my background though, to sort of almost qualify why I'm going to try to run this session with you guys. My actual background is removed from healthcare. It's actually in the military. So I was a member of the Royal Air Force for 25 years. I'm an aircraft engineer by profession. And I spent the latter half of my career working within continuous and quality improvement and very much safety. My last tour, as we refer to it as, was as an area management coordinator, as an occurrence investigator, and general all things safety. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm just going to let my colleague Delphine introduce herself and give a little bit for you. Delphine?
Hi, good morning. My name is Delphine Corgier. I'm an improvement advisor at AQuA as well. I've been in the NHS for about 28 years myself, and I specialize in the application of QI directly with clinical teams. So I'm here to help you with practical things on this presentation.
Okay, thanks, Delphine. So what we want to do with this presentation for the morning we've got together is we want to be, as Emma has quite rightly said, we need to be as interactive as possible. As much as I like the idea that you're all massively happy to hear me whittle on for the next 2 hours, the reality is that's probably not the case. So I really need you to be interactive with me about this. Ask questions, be curious. And one of the pieces of software that we actually use to enable this is an interactive whiteboard that we call Miro. I'm not going to turn around for any second and say I'm an expert at this at all. I can use it, but Delph, however, is really, really good at this. So I'm going to hand over back to Delph again, who's going to give you some instructions, and we're going to start with a little practice session on how we can get onto Miro, how we can use it, and some of the practical aspects. Delph, I'm going to leave that with you. If you can run through the team, please.
Yes, certainly. the first thing that you need to do, if you can, is to open your Chrome browser rather than the internet browser. Miro will work on Chrome much better than the other one. I'm going to put a link on the chat box and let you in onto Miro, and I'll join you in a minute. So if you copy this link and open it in Chrome, it might take a while to get in, and you may get some 3 chevrons moving around while you're waiting. I can see some people are coming in. Okay, we've got 10 people. Okay, when you get onto the board, please don't touch anything. If you just stay there, and I will give you some instruction of what happens next, because you may be moving things around by mistake. So just log in and wait patiently for everybody to be there. Okay, we've got 10, 12, 14. Have we got everybody? If you have any problem with logging in, just put it in the chat box. Somebody's moving things. Please don't touch anything. Please just.
I'm the naughty girl in the room.
Yes, yeah, bear with me. Okay. Okay, I think we've got. Yeah, I think we've got everybody. Okay, what you should be able to see, and make sure I bring you everybody to me. What you should see is that first page on how to navigate a board and adding a sticky note. I just want to point you to a first few things. First of all, when you go on the board, you may get a little hand, a grab hand. And what you need to do is click on this arrow there on the left-hand side. The top arrow on your left-hand side toolbar, and then you will be able to do more things with that. A couple of things, you can zoom in and out of the board using your mouse wheel. But at the moment, stay with me. When you zoom in and out, it will release you from me. I've got an echo. Is everybody on mute? We're going to do some exercises with post-it notes. And the post-it notes are either on the board when we do the exercise, or you can find them on the left-hand side of your toolbar. I'll try to get an arrow to show you. It's the little square with a little turned up lip. And if you make any mistakes at any time, you can undo anything you do. It's on top there. Is everybody okay with that? Those are just the basics. Okay, we're going to have a little play now. What I'd like you to do, I'll bring you here on the right-hand side together. Oh, the other thing, if the cursors with the names is irritating you, you can get rid of them. On top, where you've got my picture there, there's a little arrow, and that hides the cursors if you want to take them out. But I find them funny. I keep them on me. Okay, we've got a board here to introduce yourself, and there's one post-it. So you can either copy this post-it by clicking on it and doing Control-V and Control-C and Control-V, or you can pick up a post-it from the left-hand side. I think it's the 4th icon on your toolbar. You can choose the color, you click on the board, and if you could put your name and your favorite food on the post-it, you just type. You can change the shape, not the shape, but the size of your post-it as well. You just click on it and then you've got it all. I just want to check that everybody's on mute while we're doing this because I'm getting some background feedback. Okay. Okay. We're going to move on the other exercise. Can you ensure everybody's on mute? I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if it's the same with everybody. Julie, you're not on mute.
I'm not.
Apparently not.
Okay, I just don't know.
Okay, for this exercise, if you do the same, grab a sticky note from the left-hand side and tell everyone what you hope to get today for attending the program. And this time, if you could leave your initials on the post-it as well, so we know what you're looking for. You're getting good at it. Very good. Okay. Are you done with the, you can go back to the board later if you like at any time. So don't worry if you've not posted here. Okay, this one, I'm taking you to a map. And I'd like you to either grab a dot and place it on the map where you are now, or you can click on the dot, do Control-C and Control-V, copy and paste on the map. Sometimes it's easier to copy and paste with dots.
We're going to struggle with Bradford, I think, Delphine.
I
think
know.
it's not on the map.
if you find it difficult to grab a dot, just click on one and do Control-C and Control-V on the map. Oh. So I think somebody's trying to get onto Miro and copy my picture instead of click on the link, whoever that is, rather than copying the picture from the message from the chat box. Okay, so we've got, I'm sure we've got more people than this in Bradford. How many have we got? 3 dots there? 3, maybe 4. Couple of people in Manchester and somebody's moving the map. I should have locked it. I'll lock it now. We've got people in Chester. Very good. Okay, has everybody managed to do a dot pretty much? We're going to move on to the next exercise. And this is what I call a sandpit. And basically what I'd like you to do is to grab anything from the toolbar on the left-hand side and have a play. So you can get a pen, you can get a post-it, you can get text, you can just try it, have fun. If you click on the 3 buttons, the 3 dots at the bottom of the toolbar, you should get more options. You all look so serious on the screen.
We're concentrating, Delphine.
I know. So don't worry later, you won't be asked to do anything as difficult as this. We will try to keep it to post-it. So this is a software, a platform that we use with clinical teams who are on the wards. We've done a collaborative just recently with physiotherapists across 5 hospitals in Greater Manchester, and they all work together using this platform.
I think you can see here as well, everyone, working in this quite challenging environment we are at the moment in a virtual world. If we are working with teams under QI, and I noticed that a few people asked about learning a bit more about QI, this kind of software is unbelievable. Well, it's vital, it's indispensable, to be honest, because you could do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So if you wanted to do a value stream analysis or even a simple process map, you can put 5, 6, 7 people, how many people in a room, and do that effectively without having to break any of the distancing rules and keep ourselves completely apart. So as Delph says, Delph and the team have been using it really successfully. Okay,
so that's your introduction to Miro. We can go back to you, Pete, now.
Super, thanks, Delph. Right, so I'm going to ask you all now to pop back onto Teams, back onto the presentation, because there's a few slides that are on there. So what we're going to do, the intention when we put this presentation together, am I still screen sharing, by the way, Delphine?
No.
Somebody is, but not you.
Oh, okay, let me screen share again then.
Yeah, we're on now, Pete.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so as we were saying, what we're going to do is we're going to mix this up as best we can so that we can get the most interaction. So at some stage, we'll jump back into Miro. So keep Miro on in the background. And then we'll run through the slides. There'll be bits where I will do the traditional sort of talk and talk bit when we'll discuss various points throughout the strategy and other areas. And then I'm going to ask some questions as well. And when I do ask a question, it's going to be really important that we get some interaction. So I'd love it if you were confident enough to put your hand up and then we just have a conversation, because that's probably, in fact, no problem about it. It's definitely the best way of learning and sharing our knowledge base. But if you just want to write something in the chat box, Emma's monitoring that and she'll relay that over to me. I can't see the chat box. That's one of the disadvantages of this virtual world. Because I'm sharing my screen, I've lost all access to the chat box. So I'm a little bit blind in that way. But it's fine. We work through this quite regularly. So let's move on to the subject itself. So patient safety strategy. It was released in July last year. Huge document, several hundreds of pages. Really important document. Really important for the way that we look at how we do safety in healthcare now. It had been put on hold, quite rightly, due to the current situation, but that now has started to shift. And recently, NHSE have said that they're looking now to start this moving. And as we go through this presentation, we'll start to talk about some of the timelines that have been set against the work that's going on. There's also, as many of you will be aware, some early adopter sites that are being used and utilised to trial this work and some of the aspects of what's required within the strategy. We're really fortunate that one of our members happens to be one of them trial sites as well, and we work really closely with them. So we get some really good intel of some of the challenges that they're meeting, and obviously to the opposite side to that, to be really appreciative, some of the really good results that are coming out of it as well. So hopefully we can share some of that with you today. Please feel free to ask any questions at any stage. I don't mind myself when it comes to presentation. If you've got a burning question that's on your mind, throw it in the chat box or just stop me. More than happy to do that. I will just pick up from where we left off. So I've said about the questions. We'll come back to these 3 points again as we go through. They're going to be the basis of the whole presentation. So for those of you who have read the strategy or even just perused it, it is pretty much set down under these 3 titles of insight, involvement and improvement, and we'll explore each one of them, what that means and what it could mean for us and our position and what we are and how do we try and achieve it. Okay, so first question then, simple question. I'd like to get an understanding of the experience in the room. So either hands up and Emma will invite you to talk, or in the chat box, has anyone got any current experience working with the National Patient Safety Strategy? Oh, and this is the bit as the facilitator, you have to be massively brave because I've got to be quiet now for at least 30 seconds to let you type. Silence is painful.
Nothing yet, Pete.
Okay, I'll give you another 10 seconds. And then from that point onwards, forever hold your peace. Okay, fine. Right, not a problem then. But that gives us a blank canvas, I suppose. If no one's got any experience of it whatsoever, then that is exactly what it is. It's a blank canvas, it's a starting point, and actually this session is going to hopefully be really, really useful for you. Some of the timelines and some of the things that I'm going to talk about over the next hour or so, if you're in a position of responsibility for actually making, might be a little bit of an ear prick up for you moment, because some of the timelines are quite speedy, shall we say. I'll move on then. And I mentioned the timeline. So since its release, as you can see from this slide, it's been slowly sort of chugging along from July. I'm going to give, there's lots, well, it's healthcare, so there's the odd acronym or mnemonic involved. Who knew? So if there is any in there that you don't know, I'll happily tell you what they are. But the first one on there is the PSIRF, as we refer to it as, which is the Patient Safety Incident Response Framework. This is currently being used by the early adopters. So what we're talking when we say this, we're talking about the new incidents investigation and review system. The idea, the general concept is instead of having different reporting and incident investigation processes depending on which sector you work in, they're going to move this into a single framework. So if you're in primary care, it'll look exactly the same as secondary. You know, if you work for the ambulance service, it'll be the same as they're doing in secondary and primary. The basis of this PSIRF is to move away, and I'll talk a little bit later about this, but it's to move away from what has been an investigation of who and chasing down the individual or individuals that have made the mistake so that they don't make that mistake again. We're moving away from that. I mentioned at the beginning that my background, and I have a really strong background, and I'm passionate about human factors. And we're taking a more human factors approach to our investigations. And it's not so much now about the who, it's about the why. And when we understand the why, we can do something about it. Interestingly, I've spoken in the past a couple of years to lots of people who have been trained in investigation, and they're doing a brilliant job. But they're taking training from organisations such as the police, who are brilliant at it because it's their job. But they investigate generally criminality, which is very much focused on the who. And it's a different type of investigation when we're in healthcare, because we're investigating for learning and understanding our systems. So really, really important piece of work that. Turn around again, development of the PSIRF, which is the P at the end of it, which is basically, instead of being a framework, it's the procedure. So it's how it's going to run. It's ongoing that at the moment. Again, the struggles that are being faced are because of the current situation. There is so little capacity in the system because of where we are right now that a lot of these timelines have been pushed to the right. And to be fair, that's the right thing to do as well. This is important, but you know, dealing with the challenges now is really, really important, and more so. So brings us back to the patient safety specialists. Now, some of you will have no doubt understand that this is a role that's being introduced by the strategy. The idea of this role is it's someone who's going to coordinate all your organisation's activity around implementation of patient safety and implementation of the strategy. It's really interesting, this role as well. Basically, it's a specific person or people that are nominated from all trusts, ambulance service, CCGs. Everyone will be responsible for putting a nomination forward for this role, and it's a specific role as well. So they're really clear. NHSC have been really clear in their guidance, and they were in their last update in August, that this is not a role where someone can do what we do in healthcare all the time and take it on as another thing that I do. I'll just pop my patient safety specialist cap on for the next 2 hours, and then I'll put my head of governance on for the next few hours, and then I'll put my whatever hat on. They've been really clear, and what they've said is, you know, you might not want to recruit externally or internally to this role, but if you don't, and you offer this position up to someone already working in that field, you'll have to restructure how you do your work, because this is now their job. It's not another job. And for me, that's really, really important. And we can discuss the challenges of that as we go through this session. And there is some really obvious challenges that will come out. And if you guys don't present them, and I'll ask some testing questions around it. Finding this person is going to be really challenging. and you have a look just in the narrative there, they're going to have to be quite knowledgeable over quite a lot of fields. What they have said is they're not expecting them to know everything straight away. They're expecting them to be in a position to know some of it and be willing to develop into the rest of it, which I think is the only way you can actually work, because I don't know many people. I've been working in safety for 20 plus years, and I'm not sure I tick every single box that's in there. So, you know, finding that person is they're a rare beast, let's put it that way. So then again, as we're going through the timeline, it's sort of, as we say, March 2021, we're looking at actually putting the new patient safety framework, get it published, get it out there, all that work out from the early adopter sites. So we can see by just looking at that timeline now that the NHSE have said, we've had our delay, we've had our stop, we now need to start moving. So if you're in a position that, you know, puts you in a place where you're going to hold responsibility or accountability for this work, really need to work closely with organisations such as NHSE, such as us, the HSN, whoever it might be, to get as much support as possible, because it's a really, really big ask. It's a really big ask. Right, fine. So
Pete,
I'm good. Yes.
just a couple of questions. So
Super.
Jane said she would be really keen to know how others are planning to implement the PSS and what the patient safety specialist role and what band. So I think you'll get to that in due course. And then Jackie said, is this role a systems role or an individual, an organisational role? I think it's organisational, isn't it? But I'm sure you'll touch on that.
Yeah, so I'm really going to go and touch deeply into the patient safety specialist role in a few slides' time, but it is an organisational role. So each, as part of the system, each organisation in the system is supposed to have nominated an individual to be able to do this work. That answers that question. As it comes to sort of banding and what level of responsibility this person will have, I'll get to that, because I don't want to steal the thunder of what I'm planning to do later. I'm needless to say that it's quite a senior person, and when we understand their responsibilities of that person, you'll see why. Okay, so open my slide deck will change. There we go. Right, so I'm going to hand you back over to Delph, and we're going to run back into Miro, and we've got a little exercise to do for 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll let Delph run it through with you.
Okay, I think you should be that ask the question, what will be the biggest challenges to implementing the NPSS? And what we'd like you to do is to pick up a post-it. Again, you can pick and drag and double click to edit, or you can copy and paste. But if you pick up the color in order that you have it on the screen, red is your biggest challenge, amber, moderate, and green, a small challenge. You can change the color of your post-it as well while you've got it on the board if you think it's a different color, by right-clicking on it, by just clicking on it, and then you'll get a little toolbar with a color dot. I can see people are dragging some lines. It's okay, I'll remove them. If you struggle with the post-its on the board, get one from the left-hand side on the toolbar. If you struggle to write on the post-it, you can pick one, right-click, and click on Edit, and then you should be able to type. So I'm going to move them around a little bit just to tidy up the board. So we've got the reds together. Okay, that was red.
So what we'll do when we get a few of these on, and in a minute, let's say, we'll pick a few of them and we'll just have a talk between us, or I'll give you the information based on the challenges that I know. Obviously under the proviso that I don't have all the answers. So if I had a magic wand, I would happily supply it, but I will definitely give you the insight that I've got up to date. I'm very fortunate position that I get to sit on some of the national groups that looking at the implementation and the content within the strategy. So hopefully I might be able to answer a good percentage of these questions.
Okay, if you click away from your post-its, so I think Emma, you're still stuck on a post-it. There, thank you.
Delphi, are you happy for me to zoom the screen? Because my old eyes are not going to let me.
Well, yes, and I will make them bigger as well.
Okay, that's fine. Right, let's have a look through some of these then.
Okay.
Resources to implement effectively. Right, that's I'm really glad someone's put that out there and put that in such a big post-it, because for me, that's the big white elephant that's sat in the middle of the room of all of this. And I've always talked really, really straight. And when I do this, I don't mean offense to anyone. I just think it's the easiest way of doing this is just to be dead out, dead straight and dead honest. We know that there's lots of organisations, lots of trusts that are under incredible financial pressure at the moment. And the ask from NHSE is that we go out and recruit and we change the way we do our business. And as of yet, I've not seen an awful lot of funding stream that's coming through to say, this is going to support this work. So I don't necessarily have an answer to that particular question, but I can certainly be empathetic to it, which isn't a great deal of use to you, I understand. But that's one of the challenges we're going to have to really work together as, and that's the importance for me of working like this as a group, so that we're not duplicating effort, we're sharing our knowledge. As we develop a better way of working, we're helping each other. And certainly those that have responsibility for this implementation or the roles within it, I think really much, which is why one of the things that I'm doing with AQuA and wider, hopefully, is building a sort of a community of practice together for the patient safety specialists, so that we can do that learning together, and hopefully the minimum amount of resource that we do have, we can use it as effectively as possible. But a really, really important point to make up, and it's been brought up there a couple of times, I can see. Changing the culture of patient safety investigation, learning, yeah, it's so important. So we've spent however long within healthcare under a culture of investigation for finding someone. I mentioned this a second ago, and I'll mention it again. We've got to go and find somebody. That's the point. Once we found somebody, when something's gone wrong, we can put that to bed. We've ticked the box, but that's not the effective way of using investigation time or energy. Rarely do things go wrong because somebody wanted them to. And if that is the case, you're on criminality at that stage. If you went out purposely to do something wrong in your job, you are not negligent. You've carried out a criminal activity, which is where the police come in. So if something's gone wrong, it's because usually because there was a system failure of some type, and it's about investigating what happened within the system. If it happened to one person, it'll happen to someone else. So yeah, real mindset change. And for me, that's about education at all levels. That's about understanding from very senior leadership through to management, through to operational workforce, about the different mentality required and the different culture required to make that happen. It won't happen by itself. It'll take an awful lot of energy and an awful lot of effort and resource. Which brings me to the resource and time post-it. Yeah, where's it coming from? Again, I'll go back and I'll fall back onto my safety net of, I don't have a magic wand. Time, resource, it's going to have to be found from somewhere. Where does it get taken from? I'm very much hoping that at some stage it becomes clear that if we're going to do this properly, that, you know, as NHSE say they want this to be the new way of working, then they have to fund it. I think we've got to the point now, even using the best QI methodologies, and I'm a massive advocate of QI. I think it's the point when you start asking for things to be done differently and heavily resourced without giving the financial backing, it becomes nearly impossible to do, and certainly impossible to do effectively. And that's my opinion. The trust implementing correctly, not cutting corners. Yeah, and that's without resource, that's inevitably what was likely to happen, isn't it? That's just the nature of how things work. If I can't fully resource something, I'm going to do the best possible I can to just about get over the line, instead of being that exemplar of excellence, which this whole strategy is based around. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And these things we need to be wary of. So again, when we're having these discussions together as a group, we definitely need to be thinking about that. Right, so where are we? Trying to get people to understand what they're looking for rather than who. Yeah, again, that comes under the one that sat underneath this, education and training. So important to, I probably would say that being a trainer and an educator, but I'm not feathering my own nest here, I can assure you. You know, for people to understand the difference, they need to be trained, they need to be developed, and they need to understand the why. Why are we doing it in this different way? And because outcomes are better. Clarity of roles is going to be really, really important, but I put that as a general across everything anyway. I think role clarity is hugely important, and I think it's a massive function of leadership. Really good, strong leadership, as part of that is setting out what the roles are for the individuals that work for you and yourself, and the boundaries of where they lay as well, so that you understand. If you don't understand the expectation, how can you possibly meet it? Let's have, oh, well, I've lost the board. Delph, could you bring the board back?
The board is there. Have you come out of it?
Yeah, I think so. Could you bring me to you?
Yeah. Oh, are you still there but somewhere else?
There we go. Thank you. I clicked on something, which is inevitable. Okay. Yeah, resource and time, we've covered that. And then IT infrastructure, yeah, there will definitely need to be a little bit of that. That's for absolutely sure. Training, we've done. Yeah, changing the TROS approach to risks. You know, that's a really interesting comment that's made. And I've had lots of conversations with quite senior people within the healthcare system. And one of the things they've mentioned off the back of the COVID and the way that we have operated incredibly in these really challenging times, and the way that we've done things differently, is about the management of risk and how we've taken a completely different approach to that, which has allowed us to implement changes so quickly. And part of the strategy does talk about risk and risk management, and again, to understand how to do that properly is a part of training. And that patient safety specialist thing is quite clear if you look, when you get the opportunity to look at the syllabus was in there. They talk about a leading term called failure mode analysis, which is a really just a detailed risk assessment, and really important to, you know, challenge that and challenge how we look at risk, because actually we can be quite effective when we do. Additional resources. So yeah, great exercise. I don't know, has anyone got any points they'd like to raise from what's been put up on that board?
Feel free to shout out or talk if you want to. You don't have to, just put it in the chat box.
If not, I'll move on. Right, okay then, I'll move back to the presentation. And Emma, if you wouldn't mind just confirming for me that the presentation's back on.
Yes, it's there, Pete.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to look at the first of the three areas now. I'm going to have a talk about it and we'll see where we are. So insight, all right, understanding what's going on within our organisation or within our system and how we can do that. And for me, what I wanted to do with this was I wanted to pick a few of the keywords from the strategy and explore what they actually meant and the importance of them. So mentioned within that my last Mario exercise that we did about training and support. So obviously this is the AQuA thing of how would we look at this. So I built this model. It reflects what the syllabus does, looks a bit. So I wanted to make a sort of common language in there. But when we're talking about insight, the areas of development that I would look for is a basic understanding of human factors and how we integrate with systems. I want to have a human factors approach to incident investigation. I want to know the whys, and I also want to understand how to get into that and have a knowledge to do it. I'm going to talk in detail about the next one, which is psychological safety. For me, psychological safety in local environments is the foundation stone to making this whole thing happen. A safety strategy is great, but if you don't have a foundation to base it on, the chances of it being as successful as possible is massively reduced. So really, really important to me. And then a form of measurement of how our culture is. Now, this is what the tool that AQuA uses. There's loads of different ways of going out and surveying our cultures. I like the ARC survey. We've got the license to use it. All I wanted to do with this slide was basically show each individual area there is a strategy or a fundamental idea of how we're going to help support that. And this is AQuA's approach to it. So without further ado, back into Miro, guys. We're going to love this. We'll be backwards and forwards a bit for this bit. Okay, and I'm back over to Delph, please.
Thank you. So I'll bring you back to me. And we're going to look at what sources of information, patient safety information, do you have available?
So the insight actual topic itself talks about understanding safety across the whole system by drawing on intelligence from multiple sources of patient safety information. So what are these sources? Where are we getting these information? Where's information from?
So you have two boards here. On the left-hand one, we just ask you to put a source, and then on the other one, a blocker to potentially that source, or any blockers you can think about. And what you can do, you can link your source to a blocker.
And it's funny when you put one of these together, you sit there and I've gone very far away from the appreciative inquiry and assets-based approach that I should have been doing here with one of our blockers. But actually, if you feel that you've got some enablers in there as well, I'd be really keen for you to sort of put some enablers down there, because actually that's the way we should be looking at this. There's going to be enough people telling us the blockers. Let's have a look at the appreciative angle. So I'll have another minute, and then I'll do what I did with the last one, is I'll go in and I'll explore some of the post-its and build on them a little bit. Right, last 15 seconds. Okay, thanks for that. So, Delph, I'm just going to zoom the screen again just to help my eyes, if that's all right. Okay, let's have a look at some of the sources of this information we've got. Okay, nice guidelines for sure. The Royal Colleges, yeah, and the Royal College is going to be quite heavily involved from with Health Education England, converting this strategy into a syllabus and then breaking that down to an actual curriculum. So there's going to be a lot of information there. Patient safety alerts, definitely, and there's quite a strong onus now in the syllabus to be more agile and reactive to that, to them patient safety alerts, which is good. I love the next one along, staff knowledge. That is such a rich source of information and data, and although I know a lot of organizations do use that, I think it's still underused or not utilized as effectively as possible. Again, I've got a really strong sort of lean background in that's what I did when I was in the Air Force, part of the continuous improvement, and one of the methodologies we talk about that is just going to Gemba. It's about going into, what that basically means is going onto the shop floor and going and working and talking with the teams that are experiencing life day to day. I think one of the richest sources of information that you will receive, and a really good data source. So yeah, definitely. Okay. Discussions with patients or relatives and relatives sits in the same boat as well with the staff. So important, and at AQuA we do loads of work with shared decision making and patients and person-centered care. What is the patient experience? We think we know what the patient is experiencing because we were part of the process, but I don't think all the time that is fact. And we can become much richer in our thinking by having them conversations, by having the opportunity to be able to bring the patients, relatives, families, carers, whomever it might be in the discussion, to build a bigger and more accurate picture of what safety looks like. So they're great. Audit, Department of Health, research, nice again. Yeah, audit's really important. Really important to understand where we might have issue or not, where we're doing well or not. And that's something that we'll mention here as well. One of the things that we've talked about, and I'm going to put the appreciative angle on here, is we also need to understand through our intelligence and our sources of information about what's working really well in systems. That's called safety 2 thinking, or learning from excellence is a term that's used within healthcare quite a lot. Really, really important. Incident reporting, yeah, I mean, we could say that was our main thing. When we talk incident reporting, though, something goes wrong, we do an investigation, we build a report, and we fix the system. Brilliant. It would be nice if we could be a little bit more proactive or have a little more foresight, perhaps. A lot of incidents reporting that's done currently is done on when an event happens, and what I'm going to be really keen on when I do my work with people in this roles is to understand the importance of near miss. And actually the difference between a near miss and a hit is usually just an intervention by a human being. So again, but it's a great source of information. And that's linked in here to the blockers to accurate reporting. So what stops us accurately reporting? It's a rhetorical question because there's loads of things, but two of the ones that really stick in my mind about stopping accurate reporting is one, having the ability to do that, the knowledge, the experience and the training to understand how to do that. And two is having the time to put a full report in. I'm going to actually go one further. I said two, but there's three. And one of the biggest blockers that I speak when I'm out talking to our membership for people that put reports in is I didn't see a result of my report. So I put my time, I finished my shift, I've done a 12-hour shift, I'm a nurse on a ward, I know I've got a report, I've put the report in. At the end of my shift, it's taken me half an hour to fill in this Datex or Ulysses or whatever it is that you've done. I've sent that off, I've had an automatic email that said thanks very much, and I've seen nothing else. So it represents no value. So feedback on reporting is crucial if you're going to have a strong system. Yeah, next thing we're going to talk about in the next slide is the staff intelligence through being open. Hugely important, and that's a cultural shift. It's an awful lot of effort and energy, but it's so worth it. Data, staff, patients and audits and family. So we've talked about all of them. That's really, really good. Thank you for that. Some of the blockers that are in here. Right, top one, staff not wishing to raise issues and being visible. Yeah, the next thing I'm going to talk about in the slideshow, you're absolutely right. There's many, many reasons why staff feel, and I'll use the term here because I've just been dead honest and straight with the conversation, they don't feel safe to be able to raise issues or concerns or challenge. And again, we won't go too much of that because it's the next part of the presentation that I'm going to do. We have the Zoom engagement. Yeah, fully engaged with people, are we not? That's a great one. Staff fear of whistle blowing. Again, linked to the one we just mentioned before. Me personally, and this is my subjective Pete Ledwith opinion here, I dislike the term whistleblowing massively. I just think it has the wrong connotation, and I think it is a blocker to us learning about our system and being able to develop the safest possible system that we can. But there is a massive fear factor about it because of the amount of sort of retribution that happens when people are appeared to be whistleblowers. Instead of what, in my opinion, should be is you should be celebrating the staff that are brave enough to come forward. They shouldn't even need to be brave. Bravery shouldn't be, I've just said it, but bravery shouldn't be something that's required. It should be the way we do business around here, because that's how you become really knowledgeable about the risks within your system. I'll get a bit passionate about this. My last job that I did in the Air Force, I was area coordinator, area management coordinator, which basically meant I had to take all the incident reports, work them through and carry out all remedial action. My CEO at the time brought me into his office when I first started and said, welcome Pete, welcome to the organisation. I don't really understand why I employ you, which was massively satisfying for me, as you can imagine. And I asked him why. I wasn't quite direct. I said, why did you say that? He says, well, I've been here for 2 years now, and the amount of reports that we receive is very, very minimal. And my point back to him straight away from that was, that's exactly why you need to employ me, because there's a fear of reporting. You're responsible as a CAO and you are accountable for the safety of this system on this Royal Air Force base, and you're not knowledgeable about what's going on because people are scared or there is blockers to that. It's a really, really important point. Well done. Whoever raised that, thank you. Staff reluctance, fear in the game, patients deceased. Yeah. Families. Yeah, we could pick up loads from the press and media that's happened with some of the high profile events where family and hostilities, and that's a real challenge as well. Okay, great. Brilliant exercise. Thank you for that. That's opened loads of opportunity for discussion, and hopefully It's opened, and what I want to get out of this whole program is to get you guys to be able to reflect on what we're talking about here and think about how you within your organization might change it, or how you within your organizations might think about approaching support from an organization like AQuA or NIAA or whoever it might be to be supported in making that change, because it is really, really important. I'm going to bring you back, if you don't mind now, to the presentation, and I'm going to run through a couple of slides, some of which we've already talked about here, but I'm just going to add a little further meat onto the bones. So, Emma, can you just confirm for me I'm definitely still screen sharing, please?
You are, Pete.
Thank you. Right. So, for me, and I mentioned this before, psychological safety is the absolute foundation of building a safety culture. We can build strategies that look fantastic and everyone understands it. We can do so much work around culture, and I'm going to talk about culture as well in a little bit over this. And that's, again, really important. Cultural change is so difficult, and we can invest so much time. But psychological safety in a local setting, as it says there, will kill them all. It'll eat them all for breakfast. We set the culture of an organisation is usually set by leadership. It's enabled by leadership, but culture is done by the workforce. It's done by everybody. Doesn't matter how enabled you are by the senior leadership team to have a safety-driven culture or a patient safety culture. If the psychological safety in that local setting, whether it be at the operational end, whether it be in middle management, or whether it's leadership, if in that local setting you are not psychologically safe to speak freely and give your opinion, the other work that you've done will be completely eaten by it. It is really, really important. So why? Well, everyone's worlds are different. So right now in this world, that is you, but you are being affected by so many things external to the work that you do. Your social life, yes, your professional life and the work that you're doing, your family. There is lots and lots of factors that are affecting you and your personal psychologically safe condition. So today, okay, is completely different from yesterday. There's a different set of parameters that are affecting who you are, and there most likely is they're going to be completely different to tomorrow. So we need to be aware of this. We're not machines. I mentioned my human factors background, my human behavior background. It's so important to understand that and to appreciate that every single day for every individual is going to be slightly different, and we need to be safe to be able to say that and to get that out on the table. It's been really important over the last few months. We've been working with trusts to offer psychological safe environments and well-being for staff, and I've been doing interventions with them where you know we've been using that strapline in healthcare appropriately about it's okay to not be okay. That is so true. It is absolutely okay to not be okay, because sometimes it's just really hard. So an appreciation of that is really, really important. Okay, so mention psychological safety. I've got a question for you, and I'm happy for you to just speak out loud, or if you don't want to, would you mind in the chat box just pop down a line of what does psychological safety mean to you?
We've got some chat coming through now, Pete.
Super.
So Sarah said, it's safe to admit that I don't know something or that I'm having a bad day. Vicky said, feeling supported by colleagues and leaders. Jane has said, it's the first time I've heard that term used, but I guess it's a no blame culture. So some people aren't aware of that term, psychological safety. Julie has said it's a safe and secure environment.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on a few of them for sure. So that one that was mentioned about it's okay to not know. That's a really, really strong. I mean, there are obviously quite granular points within it, but that's a really good example of course, it's okay to not know. There's an expectation. So I used the example of back when I was back in the military. I was out in the Middle East in a desert somewhere, and I was leading a team with a job to do, and you end up with 7, 8 guys looking at you for the answers to the question, and I massive amount of pressure to give them that answer, and literally had no idea. And we worked really hard within this idea of site safety to turn around and flip it and say, guys, I'm out right now. What I need us to do together is to come up with some ideas of how we can get around this and have it perfectly acceptable that I might be designated as the leader of that team, but there's no expectation as a leader that I would have every single piece of information. In fact, when we worked with the leadership academies, what we said was some of the best traits of leadership is truly understanding that you're not expected to know everything. A really good leader uses all the resources around them to get the very best information so that they can make the best decisions. So it's a mindset change. Really, really good point.
There's more. Yeah, there's more. Andrea said, being comfortable with my own feelings and managing them in a positive way for me, even if they're difficult, feeling I'm okay with work and the effects it may have on me. So it's a bit similar to what you're saying there. Feeling safe in the environment you're in is what Darren said. And Jackie says, being treated as an equal and respected in my team. And then Andrea said a follow-up, I think working in a mainly mental health trust, we have a good understanding, but because of that, we don't always implement it, we assume it.
Yeah. Do you know, but that last point is a really good one, isn't it? And I must admit, I've worked with a couple of mental health trusts as well. And that assumption is a real thing, is, you know, because of the nature of the work that you do, exactly how you should act and how you should be. But the reality is it is an assumption that we do that, and it is an assumption that everyone's giving their voice. And sometimes that's not the case.
Absolutely. Yeah, Andrea, do you want to unmute yourself and add anything else? Be brave.
Sorry, I was just eating biscuits for breakfast.
Even better.
I'm jealous.
Whilst typing and making comments. No, I think the problem with mental health staff predominantly is we all know what we should be doing and we're great at telling everyone else what we should be doing. We're just not very good at following it ourselves a lot of the time. I think we're more aware of it and more astute to picking up on other people's psychological safety. I just don't think we do it very well ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think when it's that close to you, sometimes you do miss it because it's right under your nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good point. Okay, brilliant. So if there's no more, Emma, I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we've done these, so as part of AQuA, we run psychological safety workshops and clinics to help establish this. And some of the answers that have come through, very similar to the ones that you've given me, which I'm really grateful for, are things like this, you know, the ability to be able to share concerns. Now, I know, again, from my background when I was out on operations, that having that opportunity just to be able to have a conversation with someone and say, I am really worried about this, or I think this might be an issue, or whatever it might be, is just that offload is just incredibly helpful. Caring, helpful, listening, involving people, treating people with respect and civility all comes under this for me. That support policy. It's funny saying leaving on time. When that was put on there, we inquired, what do you mean when leaving on time? What what they actually meant by that, the person that wrote down, was, well, I'm quite a senior leader within my team, and I always am the last person to walk out of the door. And I thought that was me setting an example to the team of, this is me giving it 110%. And actually what she was doing was she was setting an example of an expectation for everyone else to do more than what they should actually be doing. And she argued quite clearly that I should be leaving on time. I should be setting the example that the work-life balance is so important and we need to maintain it. And that is what part of that psychological safe conditions. And that was why I was putting quite a big line. That was quite a big strike point for me, because one of the things that I tend to do, I think generally because I love my job, is I tend to do quite a lot of hours, and I send emails sometimes at spurious times, without considering the expectation of people who read them, going, God, you know, Pete's working at 7 o'clock at night and he's sending emails. I hope he doesn't think I'm supposed to be doing that, because I'm not. And whereas the expectation's not that at all. It's just that that's just what I was doing, because I'm so embroiled and just enjoying what I'm doing for me. So lots of little points in there, you can see what it is, but it's so, so important. Right, got another question for you. Slightly different frame on this question, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to see, put it on the chat box, or if you are brave, let's have a conversation. One of the things that I will ask us to do on these sessions is to be quite brave. I want us to feel safe amongst ourselves so that we can have some real sort of challenging conversations, because without them challenging conversations, it's very difficult to be able to fix it or to truly understand it.
That your staff are in a good place to be able to come to work.
Sorry, I missed that entirely. I was just taking a big gulp of water.
It's all right. I said it at that point. That your staff are in a good place to be able to come to work, so they're mentally healthy.
Yeah, there's someone in the background with a mic on that I think they're doing their dishes. It's very hard to hear, but yeah, I completely agree. So your staff are absolutely in the right place to come to work. For me, what I want is anyone that I work with to be waking up in the morning and going, right, let's go to work. Not waking up in the morning and being, oh God, I've got to get through another 8 hours. So set them up from an organisational point so that they can do that. Yeah, really good point. Thank you.
Sorry, Pete, I was on mute. So Andrea's had a comment, staff wellbeing and support, ensuring there are psychological first aiders in the workplace so that staff stay healthy physically and mentally and are debriefed after incidents.
Yeah. Okay, right. So that's really good. And I learned loads from the current situation with going around with trusts and the amount of work that they've put in. And some of it was in reaction to the current situation, but some of it was just extent work that they've always done. And actually setting time aside and having people aside where they can support. So some of the practical examples that I've seen out there is, again, I'm not entirely sure I like the terminology myself, but it's my subjective opinion. It's things like wobble rooms and breakout areas where we can just sit and have conversations, someone to go and talk to in a completely, not so much, maybe not so much as like the freedom to speak up guardian, but just somewhere where you can just have a chat about how you're feeling. So from an organisational point of view, how do you support that? Yeah, really, really important. Giving the option from an organisational point of view that the staff have got an outlet and somewhere to go, because hopefully as we start developing these new cultures and these new ways of thinking, the staff will understand the importance of it, but they still need the organisation to support that ability to be able to speak and talk freely.
Yeah, and we've got Georgina saying, knowing that your concerns are listened to and acted upon. Georgina, do you want to talk a little bit about what that means in your organisation? Georgina, are you there? Give you a chance to unmute. And Julie, you've written retention of staff, less sickness and reputation as a good organisation, loyalty to teamwork. Julie, do you want to talk about what that means in your organisation?
I just think if you support your staff well and there's things in place to do that as a workforce, then that will give you all those things, and your organisation will then be a desired place to work. And the staff will get more out of their workplace job satisfaction.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. And actually, I think it helps to answer some of the questions we mentioned earlier with regards to the challenges of almost funding and resourcing the work that we've got to do. One of the, as you well know, one of the biggest challenges we have is with staff retention, staff sickness. So if we can invest in building a safe environment for staff to be where they feel safe and they enjoying the work, there is loads of evidence that supports that means you get better retention and you also get lowered staff sickness. With both of them two things happening, you automatically generate resource, which is going to help. It can't, in my opinion, it can't do anything but help when we know we've got the implementation. It's almost, I think we used to refer to it as a rubber circle. It's self-feeding. It's, you know, it leads, one improvement leads to the next, which leads to the next. So absolutely 100% couldn't agree with you more. And then of course you've got the added bonus that you become known regionally and beyond as an organisation that's great to work for. So you encourage the very best staff to come and work for you, which again just improves the whole thing. It's cyclic and it's almost organic in that way if you can make it happen.
And Georgina, should we go back to you now? I know you were having a technical challenge about muting and unmuting, but I think that your point about knowing your concerns and listening to and acting upon, I think, ties into Julie's point. Do you want to comment? We'll wait for you to unmute.
I suppose I'll jump in then, Georgina, if you can't do it. Feel free to jump in over the top of me if you want to at any stage. But what you say there is, again, complete agreement with it. And for me, I use the word value all the time. So when people discuss issues that are close and personal to them, if they are acted on, or if they are at least appear to be acted on, and they should be acted on, then that represents value for the person that's invested of actually telling you about it. I feel safe enough to have the conversation. So I've had the conversation, and as a result of the conversation, something is now different. Whether that's a physical change in the way we work, or I'm now informed to why something is done in a particular way. But there has been an improvement on our outlook. So yeah, completely, really, really important that as well.
Okay, Pete, that's fine.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
right,
you go.
Perfect. Right, so we'll do the next couple of slides and then we'll have a little bit of a comfort break. So some of the ones again from what we've had in the past, what can we do for an organisation? There's a couple on here that did maybe giggle, so I popped them in there from other things. So yoga, I don't know many organisations that have set themselves up with yoga gyms, but hey, if it works for you, absolutely. I think from your own personal time, I must admit I am an absolute fan of it, so it helps me relax in my own time. But you mentioned some of these, some separate areas for wellbeing, and I've seen these used now, and I'm an advocate. Definitely, it's that break away from what we're trying to do. Freedom to speak up, events, not just necessarily in that Guardian sort of thing, although that's really, really important as well. Marketing activities externally on social media. As an organisation, really push hard to let your staff know that this is the methodology and this is the culture that you are promoting. And also to the fact if it's not being promoted, if that psychological safety in local settings isn't being properly promoted, then the safety to say so. You know, it's just not working here. So there's lots and lots of stuff, and you can see the stuff on there. Staff survey results are great. I like staff surveys. I like surveys for staff because it's a really good way of gleaning information. What I would say, an slight caution with surveys is, and again brings me back to my word value, if staff surveys are great, but there needs to be an outcome from them for the people that do it. So if I fill in a survey and it takes me 25 minutes to do that, I want slightly more than an automated response saying, thank you for your survey. I want to know what's happening as a result of me doing that survey, because all that work should be leading to some form of improvement activity. Unless, of course, the survey comes back that you're absolutely the best you could possibly be, in which case I would suggest the results of the survey, because I don't know anywhere that is. Even the best places can definitely get better. So,
but Pete, just to say that Julie made a good point, saying that she felt that COVID has enhanced the support for frontline staff. And I think that's good. And then Georgina's commented that when she was a nurse a long time ago, the staff didn't feel their concerns would be listened to, so they didn't raise them. I think that type of culture may sadly still exist in some places. And then Darren, you said, I don't think that the FFT SUP, I don't know what that is, event will work until you have good culture. What's the FFTS?
Freedom
Someone
to speak
help
up.
me there.
freedom
Freedom
to speak up.
Of course, yes. Sorry, Darren. Yes, will help until you have the right culture. I think you're absolutely right, Darren. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. All really, really good points. So I just want to bring on the next slide now, and this is an Amy Edmondson piece that we've kind of reframed, and it sort of looks in the middle there, goes how it creates psychological safety within a crisis. And yes, it is right, but actually I think this works just wholesale at all times, and it's just an 8-step guide. It's not a complete do all and end all, but it's a really good starting point. And if we just go round, I'm just going to go around each of these points and just raise them, and we can debate them if you wish, but I think it's really important that we understand what we're talking about when we're talking about psychological safety. So the first one on there is hold people accountable for their transgressions. So if someone does speak out of turn, then you need to challenge them against that. And really importantly, it's about appropriate challenge. So it's not about shouting and arguing. It's about having a really civil conversation about the standards in this organisation are set that we do not talk to each other in that way. It's not respectful, and therefore we're not getting the best out of our people. Really important, we mentioned about role clarity, and that was one of the points that was brought up within the Miro session. Set some boundaries. You know, I need to know where my limit is set for what I'm supposed to do, and then I can escalate from that point. I feel safe that I've met the requirements of my boundary, so I'm safe now to move that on to the next level or the next area. 3 on there is highlight failures as opportunities. Core to me, absolute core to me. This sings it absolutely to my choir. So when something goes wrong, everyone puts that negative connotation on it. And of course, we don't want things to go wrong, but we flip it around. What do we learn? What do we actually build from this so that it doesn't happen again, or we do things in a different way so we get a better outcome next time? Don't dismiss it as a bad thing and hide it away. Bring it to the forefront, work with it, develop a learning system that allows us to get better. So use direct language. I'm a big advocate of this, and I will tell you quite straightly that I can't work well in conversations where we're guarded about what we say, because I sometimes can't find the wood for the trees. I need people to talk to me in a straight way. Pete, I think you need to do it in this way. Great, thanks very much. I really appreciate your honesty and your straightforward. And again, that's a skill set in itself, being able to do that and understand the people you're talking about. What we wouldn't want to do there is use direct language with someone that doesn't like to receive that message in that way, because you're probably going to hurt their feelings, offend them, or really upset them. Willing to display fallibility. You know, we are all human. We will make mistakes. There are some brilliant people that work within healthcare. There's no two ways about it. And I've met multiple people I've looked at and gone, oh my goodness me, you are like a genius. They still make mistakes, and you always will. And if we can't accept that, we'll never be able to build systems that support people to make fewer mistakes. And I'm really, really conscious of the language that I use when I say that. You cannot build a system with a human being involved in it that is error-proof and won't fail. Doesn't exist. Don't try. You're wasting your energy. We build the systems that are as safe as possible, built on the data that we know about. So absolutely be willing to accept it. Don't want it, but learn from it and build stronger systems. Be accessible all the time. Should be open. Should be said, yeah, come and speak to me. What can I do? And I think that one stands for itself. And I think 7 sits in with 5 a little bit. And I've been guilty of this in the past in a big way. You know, putting the knowledge, knowing where your edge of your knowledge is. Don't start wandering into uncharted territory where you're pushing the boundaries beyond what you know, because you very quickly end up in a world of risk and danger in that world. And again, that psych safety bit allows us to say, I don't know. I just don't have the answer here. I need someone to help me so that we can fathom this out. And it can be difficult in some environments to do that. And certainly if you're a leader, or the perception of a leader stroke manager, this old sort of notion of I need to know everything, can't possibly, just doesn't exist. So we need to know where the edge of our limits are and then engage with the people when we need to be able to expand them limits a bit further. And then that brings us on to 8, which links to 7. Yeah, invite participation. And when I say participation, it's about all that resource that works around you. If you think about the teams that you work with right now and the brilliance, the pure academic brilliance, as well as the enthusiasm and that they bring into your team, yeah, invite them to come in and to flourish and to build bigger systems, because that's how you get the best out of everything that you do. Okay, so
there's another one on there though. If you're inviting people to participate, you actually want to be a person that's going to listen, because you get so many managers that say, have you got any suggestions, and then listen to nothing.
Yeah, I must admit, so some of the times that we do that is when we're feeling really pressured. So, you know, as I suppose almost as part of a training process that you've been through, I need to engage with my staff. Has anyone got any suggestions? Oh, well, that's great. I've done that bit. Now I'm going to go back to what I was going to do. So refer to really as sort of tokenism. Whereas, yeah, and I again link this to the value. If you invite someone to offer their suggestion, thus invest in what we're doing, then you need to act on that. Otherwise, the next time you give them the opportunity, there's a strong possibility they might just go, no, I'm not putting my head above that parapet again because it's too dangerous. I expose myself to that danger, and I don't want to do that again. So yeah, really, really good point. We need to act on it, or at least, you know, explain why we're not, and give a really good, valuable reason why it's a great suggestion, it's a great idea. However, in this instance, we can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. But keep the ideas flowing because they're really important to us, not just a carte blanche. No. Yeah, thank you. Good point. Anyone else anything to add to that?
Nothing in the chat, Pete, but there might be people have comments. Jane's made a comment about direct language being important to prevent errors.
Yeah. I think especially with the direct language one, when you're looking at a real operational, if you're in a sort of operational clinical environment, especially, the ability to be able to have direct language and utilize direct language as a team and understand why you're talking like that and why you are using that language is really, really important. And again, as part of the sort of non-technical skill stuff work that we do around human factors, we call it structured critical language, where we communicate in a certain way to get the job done in the safest possible way, because it takes any ambiguity out of what it is we're trying to say. So there's 2 elements to that direct language thing. There is that real operational bit at the front end, and then there's the wider, it's okay to say what you mean. Right, okay, last little bit then before we go and have a comfort break. So noticeable changes. So when I talk around here about the patient safety incident response framework, it's been, the acronym now has been turned into PSIRF, which is brilliant, because we love an acronym in healthcare. What we need is more of them. I particularly like the fact that they've got the PSERF and this PSERF, which is the process. They're not close. They're not going to get confused at all. Which there was an irony about. There's loads of papers being written about the use of acronyms and abbreviations that directly lead to less safe conditions, and then the safety strategies got them strewn all over it. However, different subject. I want to have a look at the PSERF itself and look at the old framework and how it's changed, and just highlight some of the points that I think anyone responsible in this area could really need to have a little think about. So the old SIF framework, was very performance managed. There was lots of KPIs set around it, time scales, the amount of investigations that you've done, the amount of incidents that have been reported. And in the old school, what we knew back then, that was fine. The reality is the quality of the investigation was sometimes not great. The timelines were commonly broken, or the quality of investigation wasn't as good because it had to meet the KPI to hit the timeline. It was performance driven instead of quality driven. The idea now is to change that around and actually say, no, we're not going to put quite so many constraints on this. And actually what we're going to do, and you can see I've put out in red on the patient safety incident response framework, the bits for me that really stand out where the real changes are. So noticeable changes in here is it's safety and learning. The reason we do an investigation in healthcare is to learn. And that, because when we learn, we can do something about it and we can become safer. We are not chasing people. That is just not what we do. And if we are doing that, in my opinion, we're getting it wrong. We need to learn about how our system is set up to get the result that it got. And if it got the negative result that we didn't want, how do we go and change it? Once you've built that culture into your system, you will start to receive reports and responses to response to investigation that gives you a true or a clearer image of actually work as is in your system or within your organization. Whilst you've got a system that chases people, what you'll get is responses to investigation that protects the individuals. So they will not give you the truth of what's going out. It's a human reaction to protect your own self. So that's really important that we understand. We are now not going after the people, we're going after the learning and how can we do it better. Okay, so next one down there, limited guidance around patients and family and expectations. So yeah, we know that we involve the patient, the family and the carers and the staff around the expectations currently, but it's so important, so important. So what we're saying here now is actually we're going to clearly set out how we engage when we support the patient, the families, the carers, and we support, and I'm really important this, the staff involved. So we talk about second victim quite a lot when there's an incident, and certainly when it's a serious incident, and certainly when it's a serious incident, but that second victim, from the staff's input, they need support, because 99.99% of the time when something badly goes wrong and a member of staff is involved, they absolutely didn't mean that to happen, and they will be going through an emotional roller coaster. Never mind certainly under the old framework of the pressure of the investigation and the blame that might be getting thrown around. From a human perspective and from an empathy perspective and sympathy, they're going to be absolute in turmoil. So they need to be fully supported. And that's what the strategy is saying, the framework is saying, we really do need to support every member as part of this incident. Into the next part there, root cause analysis. So when I came into healthcare a few years ago, I said I was an occurrence investigator in aviation beforehand, and 10 years ago we got rid of root cause analysis, and I got back into healthcare and I started seeing root cause analysis everywhere, and I was like almost tears in my eyes, because it spoke of a system that didn't appreciate the system and systems thinking, and understanding that there are no root causes when it comes to incidents. No one thing went wrong. There was always this desire to put an incident into a box that they could put a bow on and tie up and say, that was what it was, it's gone away now. but that's not how incidents happen. Incidents are a chain of events that happen, a set of causal factors. We need to understand all of the causal factors and then put some intervention in and mitigation against the causal factors as a chain, not just one thing in total. So really important change in thinking, and I am an absolute advocate of it because I've worked under both regimes, and the root cause thing is the wrong one in my opinion. And last bit here, and we've mentioned it already in what we've been doing, no dedicated time and resource to complete investigations. So I do an investigations program currently with AQuA, and I've talked with the delegates in front of me, and I asked them, what are their experience? And most of the people that come to me are already doing investigations. And I've said, what training have you had? And they've gone, I've not had any. So how many investigations have you done? I've done dozens. So you've been asked to do something, usually asked to do it in between the gaps of doing your day job, and you've never once been trained how to do that effectively. And then I look back and ask the question of, and the outcomes from these investigations, and my delegates are dead honest, and they go, they probably could be a lot better. And there's no wonder they could be a lot better. So what the strategy has highlighted is we do need to train our staff properly. And they're talking about staff that are getting trained up to 3 full days of training, which I completely agree with. I think it's important to understand human behaviour and all the rest of the work that goes around that and how to carry out a full investigation. They need to learn how to experience doing investigations. So it's that you can't just do a bunch of training and then expect it to be a great investigator. That skill set is developed. So it's about learning together. And really, and I don't know where this is coming from yet, I don't have the answers, but at least NHSE have said there needs to be time and resource allocated to these staff so that they can do a really good job. So there's some real different mentalities. Oh yeah, again, they've also turned out, and this is a point, and again, this is the Peter Ledwith perspective. It's not MIAA or AQuA. This is just me talking honestly and freely and in a psychologically safe environment. They've talked about these investigators having to hold an AA position or above. I don't get that. I'll be dead honest with you. I think if someone's qualified and capable, but I don't really care what their band is, if they're trained and they're able to do the job, let the person do it. But that's just what NHSE have highlighted out there. It's an aside. So that's the PSERF in itself. That's the main changes that they're looking at it. It's a huge piece of work. It's currently being trialled at the adopter sites and getting some feedback on that. And there's quite a few little challenges in there, but generally speaking, it seems to be working quite well. Has anyone got any questions for me around the PSERF and the new framework?
In the chat box, Pete, Debbie said it's a really helpful slide because it highlights the development in safety thinking, so that's good. And Jackie's made a comment about training being followed up with coaching for investigators.
Yeah, and that's a really solid point. And I think that goes with that training that I experienced. So I think the training is that fundamental building block of this is what you should be doing, and that experience is developed with coaching as well, working along someone that's been doing this for some time that can guide people. And then you can sustain that within your organization once you have a cell of dedicated will reflect is it will work what we used to refer to as spoken hub, where there will be a central point where we gather everything, and then there will be remote trained investigators at different points within different departments who will all speak the same language, and that will be the common language of healthcare and in healthcare investigations, so that there's just one way of doing this, as in language and formality. And that is actually taking on this human factors approach to investigation.
And there's one final question from Julie. She's just saying, can you mention who the pilot sites are, Pete?
So there are several pilot sites. I can't off the top of my head, I don't know all of them, but I know that we're working with East Lancs, who are our member, who we work really, really closely with. And I have actual work, and one of our associates is actually, I think, taking on the patient safety specialist role there as well. She's an AQuA associate that I've been working with for the last couple of years. and she's been an absolutely invaluable source of real intel and data of the challenges that she's been facing day in and day out. And again, we'll be part of what I would say we're putting a community of practice together so that we can really explore these challenges and work together to try and get to the end of it. The actual adopter sites, early adopter sites, though, are available off the NHSE website.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other further questions, I suggest that we take a 15-minute comfort break, if that's okay for everyone. So the next bit we're talking about now is the actual involvement elements of the strategy. And again, to start this part off, I'm going to sort of look at what we do as AQuA to support involvement in itself and how we involve everyone in the system to work together to make this happen. Okay, so we have things like the Appreciative Inquiry Programme, shared decision making, which basically involves the patients, carers, families with the clinicians to make decisions about the health and the interventions that are going to happen for the patient, person-centered. And we also have a lived experience panel, which we've been doing for quite some time within AQuA, and that's really important. And it's proven to be really important towards the strategy, because the strategy talks about integrating what they call patient safety partners. And that is very much about having the patient at the heart of the healthcare system. They talk about putting them in quite senior roles, having them within board meetings, right the way through to the front line of operations, so that patient involvement is there at all stages, which will bring definite challenges, no two ways about it. And actually, from our experience working with our lived experience panel, as brilliant as they are, one of the things that we've had to do with them is develop them so they have understandings of how systems work. So there's a middle ground in there as well, but interesting nevertheless. So we're going to go on to another Miro exercise, get you out with your post-its again. Okay, we're going to look at this involvement, and sort of the aims to ensure that patients, staff, and partners, they have the skills and opportunity to improve patient safety. So I'm going to hand you over to Delphine again, who's going to ask you to answer the two questions in front of you there. That what groups exist to support this work currently, whether that's nationally or within your organisation? Okay, and how can we involve the groups in the work? Have you got any ideas that you could share with us that will really get this part of the strategy moving? Delphine, thank you.
Okay, so it's just like the last exercise, pick up a post-it, any color, and type your groups and stakeholders on the left-hand side and how they could be involved on the right-hand side. And again, you can link them with an arrow in between. And remember, you can zoom in and out of the board if it's too small for you.
Sorry, Peter, can we just recap on what we need to do? I just missed that.
Yeah, so we're back on Miro.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're talking about the involvement of patients, staff, partners, skills, all the things, what groups exist sort of within your organisation that allow for this, or perhaps nationally or regionally. I just wanted to highlight them out on the left-hand side board. And how can we involve groups in this work further? The strategy is really clear that it wants what they call the patient safety partners to be involved in the system at all levels, from board to front line.
Cool. Cheers.
I'll give you a hand if you're struggling with the arrows. You can get very artistic on this board.
Who can do the most artistic arrow, Delphine?
I don't know.
It'd be something to report back to when they ask you, what did you do on that session this morning? So I'll give you a couple more minutes on this, and then we'll have a look at some of the answers that are on there.
That's all right, Andrea. It's always a challenge.
Pete, if you missed it, there was a question on the, I don't know if you addressed it on the board about the pilot sites.
Yes, Pete did pick it up, Del.
Oh, sorry.
He said it'd be slanked and you can look at them on other sites. I think Pete didn't know who all the sites were.
Right, fine. Last 30 seconds. Look at some of the answers and some of the post-its that have been popped on there.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm going to zoom the screen around, Delph, so just so I can see him.
Yeah.
Okay, so what groups exist at the moment? All right, so we've got our patient forums, patient advocates, patient experience groups, PALs, yeah, okay. Get quite a lot of information, quite a lot of data that comes through the PAL system, don't we? And that one is specific work streams and develops a response to patient behavior and safety incidents. Okay, all right, fine. Now, some of the links that go to there, patient forums consultation, open forums, QI training to encourage staff engagement, multidisciplinary teams, looking at aspects of patient safety, polls, pressure ulcers, etc. Right, okay. Yeah, okay, so there's, as you can see, there are some groups already out there, and you know, we do get them involved in the work. What the strategy is going to ask us to do is going to get a lot more structured about this. So for those that have read the strategy, you'll see that it'll mention the importance of having patient influence from board to frontline, as I've repeatedly said. What they haven't quite made really clear is what that really means. But the sort of inference is that they want a real structured approach that will be, and it'll almost be monitored to the fact that there will be someone sat at board level, there'll be someone sat at mid-management level, and there'll be someone at operational level that continuously get this patient input. It will present challenges for sure. One of them challenges being is, as a patient, as a patient, I want gold plated on every single thing, and that's the expectation that I should have. The reality is sometimes that can't be the case, and that's where the world that we live in. So there's going to be monitoring of how we deal with that situation. But really, really important learning that's going to be taken from this. So the patient influence and the patient voice is a massive part of the strategy, and we will have to, whoever it is within your organizations that takes on this challenge, will have to be aware of that's going to be a requirement of it. Okay, I'm going to move back now, so I'm going to take you away from Miro and back onto the presentation.
Peter,
yes.
One of the problems with that approach is that you're learning from failure rather than learning from any excellence that you've got in there, because as a general rule, most people don't complain and don't say anything unless there's something that's wrong to actually complain about. So you're not getting somebody coming up to you and saying, do you know something you gave me really great care whilst we're in there, or very few people, and this and this were the best parts that you provided. So you're missing out on all that you're doing well, and then only picking up and addressing the things that are wrong. So you're addressing a small amount rather than actually replicating your good things across your organisation.
So yeah, and I completely agree with you that it's a human nature thing, isn't it, to complain. So excellence is an expectation, and if we gain excellence, well, as it's an expectation, why would I comment on it? Whereas anything other than that, all of a sudden we need to censure them because I feel hard done by. So I completely agree. But that comes back to that point of the challenge of training, and the experience that we had with the LEP is understand that we're not always talking about that negativity point. We're talking about that appreciative angle. So to use the terminology, we call it safety 1 and safety 2. So if the safety 1 mentality is about everything that went wrong, let's fix it. Whereas the safety 2 mentality looks at what went right. How did we get such a fantastic day today? And how do we implement that tomorrow and the next day and moving on? And how do we spread that from our ward to our department, to our division, to our organisation? So I completely agree with the point that you make. It's really, really valid. And I think there's something about not just having patients involved, but actually training and developing these patients to understand that it's not about the safety 1 in entirety, although there is some of that. It's very much about engaging the safety 2 brain and the safety 2 methodology, so they can bring that, because there is real excellence going on within our system. There's some brilliance going on out there. When it happens in isolation, it's great. But if it happens and then it's spread wider and there's learning from it, and the organisation, the system and the healthcare system nationally can learn from it, that's amazing. So yeah, really, really good point. But you're right. Generally speaking, as a patient, I expect the job to be done correctly. And when it's not, I'll hear about it. So good point. Thank you. Right, so I want to know a little bit about the culture bit they're talking about, because they use the word culture through this strategy all the way around, and quite rightly. The problem with culture is it's really hard to change. It's really, really hard to change. So for us, I do quite a lot of work around culture and around cultural development. And so we talk about the culture is felt throughout the organisation, and it's done by the operational teams and by the staff at every level. But in essence, culture is enabled by the leadership, by the senior leadership, and they have to be the enablers. The doers, that's the operational end and further down, but it has to be this has to be understood at a very, very, very senior level, which is why we do lots and lots of cultural work with senior teams within AQuA. And as you can see from the slide here, it's about the way we do things. It's not, I don't want to use the word easy, but actually comparatively it is. It's easy to talk the talk. You have to go and walk the walk. You need to go and demonstrate that when you talk about cultural change and the way that we do things around here is like this, you have to be seen to do that. Whether you're a senior leader at board level, or whether you're a senior leader within your divisional or within your particular department level, it's doing the do, not talking about it. That's what enables cultural change. Really, really important. And it is hugely challenging, and it doesn't happen overnight, but with effort and energy, it can happen. And we've worked with organisations at AQuA that have had a real cultural shift. And the staff tell us that they feel that shift. So really, really important part of the strategy is to make sure that we get the culture right, and it's organisational culture as well as that patient safety engagement culture. How do we do that? Well, I put this slide together because I think it encapsulates most of what we've talked about so far. So that outer sort of beige Venn circle, whatever you want to refer to it as, for me, we said psychological safety at all levels. From board to front line, everyone needs to be psychologically safe, and that's the foundation stone. But what we're looking to do is generate that centre blue circle, a safe, effective, efficient care for our, well, I was going to say for our patients, but for our staff as well, and for families and for carers, for everyone. So how do we do it? So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I want you to be brave, and I want you to answer me if you don't mind. We mentioned just culture a lot in healthcare. The strategy's got it written throughout it. I'm going to ask you now, what does good just culture mean to you?
Learning without blaming.
Okay, yeah, learning without blame. So that's really interesting. I'm glad you've used that word, blame, because it's a horrible, horrible word, and it's a horrible regime to be under, the blame regime. So yeah, I'm going to come back to it in a second. Anybody else?
Andrea said open, positive, honest and transparent, which is nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Just anybody else?
So let me reframe the question then.
Oh, Sarah said blame free and safe.
Blame free and safe. All right, okay, that's good. Brilliant. Perfect segue into my next question. So thank you very much. So we talk about blame free. Is that the same as no blame? Is a just culture the same as a no blame culture? It's a closed question, but I'd like you to expand on why you might say yes or no to that.
So Sarah says no. Why do you say no, Sarah?
I'll unmute myself. I'll be brave. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, be brave. Go for it.
It's not. Blame free is about. It's how to articulate it. I don't think it's the same as blame free, and no blame is not the same. I think you still have to find out the cause of an event and the reason for something, and blame's the wrong word. You need to find out why something happened and ask that question, but it shouldn't be, but it's your fault. So it's a no fault culture rather than a no blame culture. So it's not about saying this is down to this person making this mistake and therefore this has happened. It's about saying, why did this happen? And taking the personal aspect of it out.
To a degree, I completely agree with you. And I think you used the word there, you're talking about struggle to articulate and struggle to find that word. The word that I use in there when I'm struggling to find that is accountability. So in a no blame culture, which we tried in the Air Force and it failed dramatically, there was no accountability for our actions. So even as professional engineers, knowing the results of our actions, if we didn't work in a proper to the proper standards, could be catastrophic. Things still went wrong because we didn't have that level of accountability. So we still need to be held accountable for the decisions and the actions that we take, but the removing of the blame element of it is what we do. So there's an accountable culture. It has to be fair and it has to be safe. Thank you for that. Good, brave moment. Really good answer. Okay, so when we establish the just culture, what it allows us to do is when people feel that they're going to be treated, another word that gets used for just culture as well sometimes is a fair culture and fair blame. And again, I don't like fair blame because it uses the word blame. I want to take the word blame and remove it from NHS language completely. So once we've established this just culture, we can then look to start this open culture. This is this reporting culture. This is this ability to be able to say something went wrong. we didn't get this quite right, we could have done this better. In the sessions, and when we do deep dive sessions into this, we start looking at different stages of openness, and we're not going to do that here. We haven't got time for it, but it's so important for every level of the organization to understand where there is opportunity to do things differently that increases the safety of that organization. Because once we're open, it takes us to the other side of this diagram, where we build this true learning culture. We know that because we're just, it's a just world we live in, and because we're open and we're having these really frank discussions, and we're being able to put the dirty linen out and show it and talk about it, that what we can then do is we can learn from it, and we can do things differently, and then we can enable that safe, effective and efficient care for our patients and for our staff. Yeah, all the while we're maintaining what was quite rightly said earlier on, that, you know, safety one is about negative things that happen, but when you've got a true learning culture, it inherently brings in the safety two elements, the what went wrong, the learning from excellence, the let's not rely on things going wrong, let's rely on things going right. And let's have a culture in that really open learning sort of aspects that says, this isn't just our ward or department, this is our organisation, this is our system. We work together, which is why I'm so keen on building the communities of practice for this kind of work, so people can share this freely and openly. Let's move it away from being the ex-trust way of doing things to the NHS and healthcare way of doing things, because for me, that's what we should be doing. When we have brilliant practice, let's share it, because it's the patients and the staff are the people that really benefit from that kind of methodology. Again, moving on from this particular thing, I just throw this in because this is something I used to do with the Defence Academy, and I love it. And we talk about cultural change through leadership. And if we're ever struggling, if I was ever struggling when I was at work, I would fall back on this acronym, Air Forces Grace at Euston as well. And it's just the MICE way. So if I'm looking at how I want to change culture, I want to lead culture, I turn around and say, right, I need to model the way forward. I need to display exactly the way. I need to try and be inspirational. I need the team to be inspired by what I'm doing. Really important, this one. I need to be able to challenge, and I need others to be able to challenge me. Not talking there about just saying no. I'm talking about respectful, constructive challenge to decisions and processes that are actually going on. If we're going to learn as an organisation, that's vital. Teams need to be enabled. I don't know if anyone in their life has been micromanaged. I certainly have, and it feels awful. You know, teams need to be allowed to know what you want, you know, when you want it by, but allow them to go and find the actual answers. Generally speaking, teams are amazing, and they will do that. And that's where that entrust bit comes in. Entrust the results that you get. We're not saying don't monitor. We're not saying don't check in. I love the MICE model, by the way. I just have to say that I think I've spent the last 10 years of my life working on that, and it's my personal check-in. When I feel I'm not doing my job right in a leadership role, I go back to this and say, have I hit MICE? And if I haven't, I go and have that challenge to myself to make sure that I do. Right, what are we doing time-wise? Right, I was going to do another Miro exercise, but I'm going to miss it because we're a little bit short on time, because I think I've probably waffled on too much. As you're probably guessing from this, I'm quite passionate about this part of my life and what I do with AQuA. I could do this for hours. I won't put you through it. So I'm going to move past that exercise and just put a question out there. A really straightforward question, and it addresses a question that was asked earlier on. And I'm sure there's lots and lots of questions out here. So please feel free to speak up or put it in the chat box. Have you nominated, has your organisation nominated their patient safety specialists, or have you got a plan to do so? And any other questions around the specialist, full stop, I'd like to get them addressed, because I've got a little bit of background information. I don't have every answer, but if I can, I will. So whilst you're typing, you happily type away, but there was a question asked earlier on, I've just remembered it. So there was a question asked about this individual, who are they and the sort of role that they're taking up. I know there was an answer in the chat box I saw later on. They were saying that they're out at the moment to advert for an 8C, and that seems to be the sort of level that people are talking about. It is a senior role, this person, and they're expected to be able to negotiate and have that networking ability at a senior level up to and including board, whilst then also being able to have the communication skill to be able to go and work with the teams as individuals as well. It's that almost bridging position between very senior and the operational teams. So from the 3 or 4 organisations that have told me they're going out to recruit, it seems to be sat at about 8C. That's answered that question, hopefully.
So Andrea says there's been no, you're Bradford, I think, Andrea, and I think you said you're a community mental health trust. There's been some discussion, but nothing finalised yet. Jane, I'm not sure, where are you from, Jane? Remind me where you're from. Christy. So you've said you're nothing finalised yet again, but you're but likely to be you. So you're concerned that it'll just get on and add it to everything else. No pay rise. Yeah.
No.
And then Caroline, you said Bradford hasn't nominated, but their thoughts have not. Their thoughts are to not have it as an individual role. Ah, interesting. So there you go, Pete. So Andrea,
Right.
they're on with it. Jane is going to be it, and Caroline looks like they're going to share the love across a couple of people.
Okay. So I'm certainly not going to sit here some form of ivory tower and go, well, you can't do that. All I can do is really recite what NHSE have put down there. So first off, just to reiterate, the nomination for this person needs to be put forward to NHSE by the 30th of November this year. So that's a really sharp timeline, as you're probably aware. The sessions I've done in the past with the people have seen some eyebrows raised up, go, really? That's not long? It really isn't long. They are really clear that this is, and I'll share some the latest updates and literature around this that they've put out, that this is a specific role. So for those that are being, and arguably I don't want to use words for other people, but if you feel like you're being pressured into a position, NHSE are really clear that this is not about adding to the workload. This is about a new role. And if it isn't someone that's an internal candidate for the role, and they do say this quite clearly, then they would take the role on with a view to restructuring their other workload to different people. It is too, and this is from what I've read of this as well, and from the conversations I've had with the national team, it's too much to do for one person to try and do this and something else at the same time. It's a massive, massive job that it's going to be.
And Pete, what's your view about this whole thing about if it's one person, then often you see, this person is complaints person, well, they're the only person who deals with it, or they're the only person who deals with governance, or they're the only person who deals with assurance. If the Bradford way is to share the love, is that not better from a cultural perspective? Because then from it sort of permeates through the whole organisation, whereas it's just your job, Caroline, therefore you should do it. Or Jane, and nobody else needs to worry because Jane's worrying about it, for example.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Emma. I think from my perspective in the conversations I've had, it's very much like the aviation model of, and I mentioned Spoken Hub. So yeah. It's quite central around that person, but then the spokes go off to governance, they go off to the individual, go off to everywhere else, and they are more of this role is about a convener, a central point that everything flows through, but they're not, the expectation is for them not to be able to go out and get everything themselves. It's for have the teams that are in place feed into them.
Okay.
But that also brings its own challenge of that's an awful lot of information to be crunching. If you think that you're going to be responsible for the investigations, you're going to be responsible for the reporting in, you're going to be responsible for the training that's required for your investigators, you're going to be responsible for a strategy for human factors throughout the system. There's the other things like the medical examiner, there's the national patient safety alerts, you read the strategy and you'll see how big it is. enormous. It's a really big responsibility, this role, which is why I have to keep reiterating to organisations that I talk to that the concept of having one person to pop a different hat on for a couple of hours each day is probably, unless they've got a different way of working that I'm not aware of, but from my opinion, it's probably doomed to fail.
So Jane has said that they are looking to restructure to enable her to take on this role, and she's very clear that she has to remove the other parts of her role, but they're also looking to have, it looks like, a clinical input in there and some other support for her as well. So it looks like you're thinking it through quite sophisticatedly, Jane, if that's such a word, sophisticatedly, I don't know, but
yeah, and that's common the way. So they have also mentioned the fact that there might be requirement for this person plus maybe a couple of deputies depending on the size of the organisation. I know in Manchester some of the trusts are enormous, so the idea of having one person that could coordinate a massive multi-organisational trust to do that would probably overwhelm anybody, and there might be a requirement to have extra people. But again, it brings up the further question of where's the resource? I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately. What I wanted to do with this is I wanted to be really sure and really that everyone was specific that this is a role, it's an individual role. The nominations need to be in by the 30th of November, and you know, Health Education in England, us, the AHSNs, there's loads of organisations out there that are going to support working in this environment. So I'm going to move on to some of the requirements. So the actual syllabus, this I've just taken this straight out of the syllabus. It might be a little tricky to see, but I've used this slide. I've literally screen grabbed it from the syllabus just to give you an idea of the sort of skill set this person's going to require. So when we're talking across the lines here, we're talking a systems approach to patient safety, to understand systems expertise, understand about culture and how to do cultural change really well, learning from incidents, that what we've talked about in this program about changing from who to why, human factors and safety management, really deep understanding of human behavior and human integration and how we integrate with systems. Process reliability is put up there, how to do process redesign or process engineering. Talking about, say, systems of work, taking apart or deconstruction, hierarchical task analysis, really complex bits. So as you can see from this, you know, there's so much involved in this role that actually NHSE have said there's probably no one person that could do all this really well. And it's about finding someone that has got most of these skills and has the desire to develop the rest of the skills. And that's where organisations like us will come in. As I said, I've been working within safety for 15 plus years now, and I tick loads of these boxes. Do I tick every single one of them? No, I absolutely do not. So who is it? Find them, work with them, develop them, but you can't expect them to have every single answer now. This is about developing our people.
And Pete, should he be a clinical person? Should it be a clinical person?
So there's quite a lot of debate around that, to be honest with you. Me personally, I don't think it necessarily has to be a clinician. I think clinicians are great because they bring in that real frontline operational knowledge, but generally speaking, I'm going to be really careful how I put my words here because I don't want to get shot through the computer. It's about a different mindset almost for me, this. I think this some of the clinical thinking, although it's brilliant, doesn't align necessarily with the mindset of safety, this sort of culture. I'm being really careful of my words. You've caught me with a brilliant question, Emma, and I'm slightly concerned I insult someone. I definitely don't want to do that. I think it could be a clinician. I don't think it needs to be a clinician. I think if it's not a clinician, so if it was me, if I was going to go and do this role, what I would want to do is I'd want to surround myself with clinicians where I would be able to pull that information from. But does it have to be? No, I genuinely don't think it does. And there's no guidance within the strategy that says it needs to be a clinician either. Has to have clinician input though, really clearly.
we're just giving people either the answers or the questions when they're recruiting for or applying for specialist roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, did I dig myself out of that hole quick enough, did I? Because I could feel myself falling down really, really quickly. Right, okay, let's move on quickly as if that was seamless. Right, so the last bit, and it will have to be pretty snappy because we've only got 10 minutes in here. So it talks about improvement, and actually, this last bit, I've left the best bit till the last. The improvement bit is so, so important. So a lot of what we've done, we've talked about over this sort of morning, is we've talked about almost like the diagnostics bit. It's about understanding our system. This bit's about understanding what are we going to do about it. Improvement. So how do we look at this? Same thing as said, support and improvement. Well, what we would do at AQuA is we do loads and loads of coaching. We've got lots of different programs, quality improvement programs, and they range from sort of really senior leadership and that higher level negotiation sort of role that you have through to the real practical use of tools. I run a program called, I don't anymore. I used to run a program called Applied Human Factors. It's been passed on to one of my colleagues. Which is, and I love it, it's a great concept. What we do is we take human factors methodology and human behavior methodology and we mix it with QI, and we turn around and said, instead of making improvements that are based just purely around capability and capacity and hitting KPIs, let's make our improvements around human interaction so that the improvements we make work with human behavior, and we're not just tick boxing, we're actually doing things that allow people to work in a safer way naturally, as that's in the way they want to work. So loads of stuff that can be done and can be done around improvement, and that's just the AQuA's perspective on it. Loads of people have seen this before, so we'll talk about profound knowledge about improvement, and the 4 sectors that Deming will talk about here is appreciation for a system, psychological change, understanding variation, and knowledge. And the reason why I put this slide in is basically, I'm going to flip through it reasonably quickly, is from my perspective, how improvement should work. Okay, so we talk about our system. It's about understanding that nothing in a system works in isolation. If you change something in your system, you will have an effect downstream somewhere. So understand that, you know, improvement is about knowing how our system works. Psychology of change. Change is really hard. As human beings, we love standardization in the way we do things now, and we will almost certainly resist change at all levels. So we look there to say, is how do we get people to support that? There's loads of techniques, loads of work that we can do, but we need to understand how to. And this is how we build this profound knowledge as an improver. When we talk, there's variation in every single system. It's because we're human. All humans are varied, and everything we do brings that human variation in it. It's to be expected. Okay, so we say from there is it's always there, but what is that information telling me? It's about understanding what that variation means. Okay, and the theory of knowledge, your QI side of this, we're really good in healthcare at doing things that might be better. What we're not so good about is putting the structure around really observing if they are better. So doing PDSA cycles, you know, using the models, the tools to systematically test our ideas properly so we can evidence that we actually have made an improvement. And why did I go through all that? Well, that there gives us profound knowledge. That's Deming's system of profound knowledge. In itself won't produce any improvement at all. Okay, what we need to do is have a look here. We need to take profound knowledge. Now, I've been working in improvement for a long time, so I understand that. What I don't understand is the subject matter. It's your teams that understand the subject matter. So to do the improvement side, it's about having enough people with profound knowledge mixed with the people with the subject matter knowledge, blend them together, and you get that center spot. We talk about an increased capacity to make improvements. You know, it's not telling people we're going to do things, it's working in partnership so that you can blend the two knowledge sets to have really impactful improvement. And from my perspective, you add in the human factors expertise into this as well, and you've got really strong improvements that work with human behavior and will almost certainly stick and spread. So Haven't got time to do this last mile exercise, to be honest with you, so we're probably just going to talk through this one because we are literally on our last 5 minutes. Okay, we've got lots of partners. I'll talk through the majority of this, to be perfectly honest. We've got loads of partners we work across NHS to do safety and support your safety improvement work. Okay, we are obviously one of them. AQuA, there's multiple other ones out there. You'll know the ones. Lean on of a membership organisation, utilise that skill set. That's what we're there for. That's the people that will have that profound knowledge. Utilise that profound knowledge and subject expert knowledge. If you have a organisation and you've got a really strong QI background, well then utilise that yourself. Talk about what measures are we currently using. There's loads and loads of measures. The point I want to make about this is, and I've worked with loads of measures because sort of part of my role is mortality. There's lots and lots of measures out there, but we need to be really careful what we're measuring and how we're measuring and how we actually code in the measurement that we're doing, because there's quite a bit of variation from organisation to organisation. And some of the challenges that I face is when we decide that we're going to put almost like league tables together on measurement. If we're not measuring apples and apples, you will get a different result. So again, as part of a wider community, let's ensure that we're measuring the same things so that we do truly understand that we're measuring the right stuff. I was going to put a poll in there, talk about are we currently integrating human factors into our improvement activities? And this is the question I really would like to ask of all of you. So chat box up, or please talk to me about this one. How many organisations currently are really integrating human factors methodology into their day-to-day working lives?
Oh, Andrea's typing. Jane, do you just want to speak to Pete? Might be quicker than typing. Or Darren? Debbie? Ray? Or Vicky? Oh, Bradford. So Sarah's saying Bradford considered them as part of our process, but it's not built into the process.
Yeah. So my experience is there's quite a few organisations that have a real desire to do this and utilise this methodology, as it's been proven through so many other safety industries to be really effective. I think the difference between a desire to do it and actual operation of getting it done, there's a bit of a delta between the two at the moment. Again, if you're going to take on that role of patient safety specialist, or if you're going to be responsible for that, I think we need to think about how are you going to do it? What's the resource you're going to tap into? It's really important, and why it's so important in healthcare is, and I'm just going to do my HF hat for 1 minute here. When people start talking about human factors, they'll start talking to you about aviation. They'll start talking to you about rail, oil and gas, nuclear, all these safety critical organisations. But they all have, generally speaking, one thing in common. They work in what we call optimal environments, optimal working environments. So, for example, aviation, civil aviation anyway, if the aircraft is not fully fixed and serviceable, it just doesn't fly, you get a delay. If the crew aren't rested, it doesn't fly, or they get another crew to come and do it. You know, that's an optimal working environment. If at a power station that they have an incident, they shut the power station down and they go and get power from somewhere else, there's an off button. The problem, or the challenge with working in healthcare, is we work in what we call suboptimal conditions, and sometimes there's no off button. So it's about understanding how we can work safely in suboptimal conditions with our patients and our staff and still have a positive outcome. And that's where the methodology is really, really effective. It's this understanding that we don't always work in them optimal conditions.
Yeah. So Jane is saying they're just about to start a Train the Trainer course, a 5-day home and factors Train the Trainer course. And Andrew said, if people have training, can they share who's providing it? We've had some issues with the trust trying to do it on the cheap. Right, okay.
Well, as a training provider, I'm going to say that generally speaking, you don't get good training on the cheap. You get what you pay for. However, obviously, I mean, this is just a selfish plug. We do it, I do it, and the team do it, and I think we do a really, really good job of it. But there are lots of providers out there that will do it for you. Research, I'm not going to mention names because I don't sound like an endorsement, but there are several companies out there that will do some work with you. If you want to do some human factors training, though, definitely come and see us, because we're an NHS organisation, so we'll have a chat with you. We understand the challenges probably better than some of the external ones around what's sort of day-to-day facing health and healthcare.
Yes, and you've got the Yorkshire and Humber Improvement Academy too, that I know Alison and Beverly provide some safety programs over there too. So for you Bradford guys, that might work better. They're on the same campus as you, so that might work better for you.
Yeah,
but at the moment, everything's virtual.
I say everything's virtual. So I suppose one thing I'm saying there is, because everything's virtual at the moment, we can outreach to just about anyone if we want to. But if you've got it in-house, and it is, and I suppose you can answer this, I can't answer this question, but it's about the quality of the actual training. And obviously, if the quality is good, then the product is quite likely to be good off the back of that. Right, so I'm just going to move on. So coming right to the very end now, so we're a couple of minutes over. It is challenging, okay, but there's real exciting opportunity here as well. We've been asking for a change in this culture and the way we do safety in healthcare for a long time, and this could very well be it. So I'm going to encourage everyone to sort of grab it with both hands and say, right, let's work with it. If you need support, come and speak to the organisations that are there and set up to support you, whether it be us, whether it be one of the other organisations, go and seek it. You're not working in isolation, or you don't have to. It is out there for you to support you. Overall, that's what we've talked about today in general. I built the little Venn diagram in the middle because actually I think that encompasses everything we've done today. We're aiming to get an engaged safety culture, a patient safety culture, and by blending the three elements and with overall good leadership and understanding how our service users want to integrate with that system, we can get there. And for me, just final thoughts. I always put this slide up because it's my final. There's an awful lot of things happening that are going to be outside of our control when it comes to this. Okay, and certainly in the current climate. So, you know, we hold the power of how we respond. We can respond really positively, or we can choose not to. I'm a power of positivity, and we'll work that way. More than happy now for the last few minutes, or over the few minutes. If anyone's got any burning questions, please air them now, because this is the final slide of the presentation.
Thank you, Pete. Over to you, Jackie and Pam. Do you want any final closing remarks?
Thank you, Pete. That was great. I don't know where the last 3 hours have gone, because I was intrigued from hearing what you had to say. So really just to say a great big huge thank you to Emma, Pete and Delphine for delivering an extremely informative session. It's really good to have that insight into how that strategy is going to translate into operational action, and your insight into, you know, what's going on nationally and the thinking that's coming through. And also just a thought, in the future it would be really good at some stage to hear from those early adopters when they've got something tangible to sort of some learning coming out from that. So thank you again. Thank you for the participants as well. And just a quick note that the next session, and Pete referred to measurement, the next session on the 3rd of December is on measurement. It's likely to be around the same time, but you'll hear from us about that. We will send a survey monkey out in the next few days, and then once we've had your response from that, we'll send you the slides, summary notes, learning points. So for the revalidation portfolios, CPD, etc. I think that's all from me, unless Pam's got anything she wants to make note.
No, I'd just like to say that was a really, really interesting session. Thank you to everybody who attended and stayed with us and participated in the Miro board and on the chat box. That's all great. That's fantastic. So we hope to see you again on the 3rd of December for Measurement for Improvement, as these are part of a group of 4 sessions that build on each other. Just go to the MIAA website. I've put the address in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.